Well, with the re-election of Barack Obama, any chance at overturning ObamaCare has disappeared. Now that's shocking enough, but even more shocking, if less surprising, is the revelation that the economic realities that follow Obamacare simply will not be allowed to happen. Joining me now to explore our brave socialist future are comrades Steve Green and Scott Ott. Well, lads, not long ago, one of the owners of a string of Applebee's restaurants, and that's not the corporate office, but rather a franchise owner, had the poor taste, the bitter, clinging rancor, and the rank unpatriotism to announce that since Obamacare had to be implemented and since implementing it cost a ton of money, well, that meant he was going to have to sort of freeze hiring in order to make up the losses. And instantly, the Twitterverse erupted in outrage. Vindictive, bitter, a sore loser, all of that. Steve, should comrade franchise owner voluntarily submit himself for re-education and a vigorous round of self-criticism for his backward-thinking attempt to make business sense out of the glorious new world that we just voted for again?
Yeah, you know, it's one thing to joke about that, but the problem is, you know how this works. The solution to problems created by big government is more big government. So when Obamacare has all these unintended consequences, and I don't know how unintended they really are, since the eventual goal is single payer and complete control over the practice of medicine in this country. We've added $1.80 to the cost per hour of every single employee in the world, and who is that going to hurt the most? It's going to hurt the young who are just starting out. That's going to hurt the people without a whole lot of talents who need every break they can get. And yeah, we need more truth-telling on this. We've needed truth-telling on this for 2 years now. We're finally starting to get it, and the price is going to be incredibly high.
Yeah. Well, Scotty, right now, it's just bullying and moral intimidation, but as the consequences of Obama's economic realities, most of which, as you may recall, were intentionally pushed back into his second term, as those realities start to strike home, do you think we'll start to see legislative action to protect Obama's reputation and the media narrative from the grim reality of those bourgeoisie economics?
Well, you're going to see legislative action to, it's like that old tale of the kid who was trying to plug the hole in the dike with his finger, and next thing you know, another hole appears, because you can't outsmart the markets. I mean, eventually, if you go to, full-out dictatorship, you can maybe clamp down on things and scare the tar out of people. But the reality is markets will find a way. And no businessman is going to get himself into a situation where he's unnecessarily paying for something he doesn't have to pay for. And so if it's cheaper to pay the fine, he'll pay the fine. And if it's cheaper to say, you know what, this only affects businesses with more than 50 employees, I'm going to reduce each unit of my business to fewer than 50 employees. And, there are so many ways to get around this. If it's cheaper for my employees it only affects employees who work more than 30 hours a week, none of my employees are going to work more than 30 hours a week. The markets can't be fooled. The voters can be fooled, apparently, but not the markets.
Spot on. Steve, in my last Afterburner, I made the case that people voted for socialism as they cannibalized the carcass of capitalism. In other words, no one has had to feel the pain of these policies yet, but they're starting to feel them now. This guy said he couldn't afford to hire new people and still implement this healthcare policy. So do liberals have a right to be outraged over this, or is this absolutely essential to have any chance of recovery whatsoever?
Look, let's talk instead about the real cost of this. And it's not that employees are going to cost more. It's not that there's going to be less work for more people. It's not that hours are going to be cut back or the corporations are going to shrink down to fewer than 50 employees. The real cost in this is the innovation that's not going to happen. A small company, you go back to the two Steves in Steve Jobs' garage in the 1970s. They took a huge chance hiring a lot of people without a whole lot of money and with only one product. And they were able to do that because they were able to do that. They didn't have all of this regulatory expense burden on them. Where is the next Apple going to come when you suddenly have this huge fine for hiring that 50th and that 51st employee? Who is going to be the next challenger to the next IBM? They're freezing the economy in place. Progressivism is essentially feudal, and we're going to be suffering for this for generations because of it.
That's right. And obviously, once businesses stop getting more than 50 people, they'll legislatively lower the size to businesses with 20 employees or more, or 10 or 1. Scott, more or less the same question. Is it time for people to start paying for the consequences of how they vote?
Well, yeah, they're already paying for the consequences of how they vote. But another thing that's going to happen here is that companies aren't going to hire Americans. I mean, they're already doing that already when they can find better markets overseas. But, you know, the employees in Indonesia don't need to be provided with any kind of gold-plated health care program. And they will find people in other places to do the work. We are chasing people out of the American market, and it makes no sense whatsoever. It will ultimately cost, and people will finally figure it out. Now, the question is, though, will they be able to put it together? Will they be able to say, economy tanking, Obamacare driving up costs? Will that nexus ever happen? And frankly, after last Tuesday, I'm skeptical.
One thing you can count on is that when this is all over and Barack Obama leaves office in 2016, or 2017, I guess, he'll have blamed everything on Bush, and he would have been that close if he'd only had a third term. Well, folks, pretty much all of the problems we face today are due to a long and extremely pleasant vacation from reality. We'd stockpiled so much wealth and so many freedoms that we kept spending both freely, just binging away the interest and then dipping into the principal, calm in the knowledge that our reserves of both freedom and money were infinite. So no pain, all gain. Now, the consequences of these decisions are starting to come home. This is the very smallest tip of the gigantic iceberg that this Titanic has hit and then backed up and then hit again. And until people start paying for the consequences of these decisions, in this case, by being turned down for a job at Applebee's because Applebee's cannot afford to both hire you and pay for the free stuff you just voted out of their bottom line. Well, until that happens, things are going to continue to get worse. It would have been nice to turn things around through reason and foresight, but we left that option behind us last week. The carrot is gone, and it's nothing but sticks to the horizon. For PJTV, I'm Bill Whittle.